Hey everyone, you've got Nisha here, and I will be filling in for Isaiah this week for the This Week in Congress video. And we have a lot to cover, so let's get started. So, one of the bills on our radar this week is America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018, and that is S3021. That was introduced in June and has just now landed on the President's desk as of October 12th, where it will either be vetoed or approved and then signed into law. And basically the upshot of the bill is that it reauthorizes billions of dollars of federal spending on ports and harbors and waterways, and it'll deauthorize inefficient spending on other water projects. Essentially, the goal of this bill is to help rebuild some of the water infrastructure in America that was implemented in World War II, and so has now become very outdated. And the consequences of it being outdated is has actually created this water crisis in America that nobody is talking about. In fact, Vox wrote an article that's really interesting. I'll link that below. You should definitely check it out. There's some really surprising and shocking facts in there. So the idea is that America's water infrastructure needs a serious update. However, the question is who pays for that? And what happens is that this outdated infrastructure is making water too expensive for millions of families. There are 14 million households, which is 12% of the homes in the United States, where water bills are just too expensive. And this particularly affects poorer Americans because they can't keep up with their water bills because they're just so expensive at this point. And to add to the problems that specific group of people are facing is that it's up to the discretion of the water utilities companies to grant financial assistance for those people who are falling behind in their bills, and therefore there's no guarantee that these poorer households will have continued access to water. And what's really interesting about that is the UN has declared water as a fundamental, basic human right. Officially, it is a basic human right. So how do we go about solving this problem? Well, hence the America Water Infrastructure Act of 2018. The thing to watch about this bill is to see how much it's going to help. Is it enough to help ease the burden on poor Americans who can't afford their water bills anymore? Is this enough to solve that problem? So I'm going to throw one last piece of information at you about the Water Infrastructure Act and the water crisis in the U.S. Civil engineers have estimated that it's going to be about $1 trillion over the next 25 years to bring the drinking water system up to code. And this bill offers several billion dollars against that $1 trillion, but again, that trillion is over the next 25 years, so we've got some time. So the question is this several billion dollars going to be enough to offset at least part of the trillion that we need, and how much of an impact is this couple $billion going to have on Americans who are struggling right now to pay their water bills? How much is it really going to help them? That will be something to watch to see what the actual tangible impact of that is going to be in the near future, as opposed to over just the next 25 years. That's something we can watch right now. Moving on, let's talk about body cams. There's a new bill that was introduced at the beginning of this month, October, on the 2nd, and it's called HR 7028, and it's titled DHS Body-Worn Camera Act of 2018. There's a longer official title, I suppose I'll give that to you too. The title is To Establish Pilot Programs for and Require the Development of Policies with Respect to the Use of Body-Worn Cameras by Officers and Agents of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and for other purposes. Relatively self-explanatory title. So this bill was introduced by Senator Kamala Harris of California, and it does three main things. The first thing that it does is it establishes pilot programs at U.S. Customs and Border Protection and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And the pilot programs are these 11th-month-long experiments you can think of, where at least 500 body-worn cameras will be given to officers and agents at borders, and with the purpose of regulating the conduct and also being able to investigate potential misconduct, and for other law enforcement purposes. So you can very much think of this as like a law enforcement bill. The second thing that it does is it is directing the Department of Homeland Security to develop more in-depth body-worn camera policies, because if you're going to distribute a bunch of body-worn cameras, there has to be policy behind it, of course. This is America, after all. I kid. But so some of the policies that this is going to include are going to be when the cameras are required to be activated or deactivated, the storage of those recordings, privacy protections, and circumstances under which the recordings can actually be admissible and used to investigate potential misconduct. So they are asking the DHS to consult with internal and external stakeholders to develop pilot programs and draft these policies, essentially. And then the third thing that it does is, after we've got the policies rolling, it's going to require the implementation of those policies and the actual deployment of the body-worn cameras on a larger scale. So that is what this DHS Body-Worn Cameras Act of 2018 is trying to accomplish. It is still at the beginning stage. It has just been introduced recently, so that'll be able to watch to see what happens next with that. So before I move on to the last bill we're going to discuss this week, let's break up some of this hard news with something a little bit more cheery. At least I think it's cheery. There is a bill that was introduced on October 19th that reads, expressing support for the designation of the week beginning on October 21st, that's this week, as National Chemistry Week. And I think that's good news, because I love to see people supporting and kids being excited about science. I was always excited about science, so love to see that. Okay, moving on. The last thing we're going to talk about today is this H.R. 7059 that was introduced on October 12th, and it is the Build the Wall, Enforce the Law Act of 2018. It is a bill that is designed to fund Donald Trump's border wall, and we've seen lots of talk about this in the news. We've seen lots of proposals for it, but this is one of the latest that is requesting $23.4 billion along with $1.6 billion from the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2018. So a total of about $25 billion to complete this larger version of the wall. So this bill is introduced by House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, and he says, this is, and I quote, that President Trump's election was a wake-up call to Washington. The American people want us to build the wall and enforce the wall. Maintaining strong borders is one of the basic responsibilities of any nation. For too long, America has failed this responsibility. He goes on to say that he introduced legislation that commits the House to these goals. This bill combats sanctuary cities, transnational gangs like MS-13, human trafficking, and deadly drugs like fentanyl. It supports federal law enforcement like ICE, and it fully funds the wall by appropriating the full amount requested by President Trump for its construction, bringing the total amount of funding to $25 billion. So that's it. So what's going on in Congress? There are one more thing I wanted to add that's the end of that bill. But one more thing I wanted to add that I would like to alert anybody who watches these videos, is that on the congress.gov website, which lists out all of the latest actions and latest happenings with bills and what's being introduced, and again, let me lay out what an action is. Bills could go through essentially 5 stages. 1, they get introduced. 2, they go through the House. 3, they go through the Senate. 4, they go to the president's desk. And 5, they get passed into law. And so you can actually see what stage the bill is at on the site. Also, and I think this is really cool, we talk about bills to watch, but the question is, how do you track them? Well, we help you track them. But another way to do it also is on the site next to the bill, you can actually get email alerts that will update you if there's an action on the bill. So if, let's say, one of the bills that you're interested in, like the Water Infrastructure Act, it's on the president's desk right now, but if it gets passed into law, then you can get an email update that'll tell you if that happens, or if a bill has just been introduced, like the body cams, the Body Cams Act, the bill that we were just talking about. You can see if it's gone through to the House, or when it goes through the Senate, and then when it goes to the House. So you'll get email updates about that, which I think is really cool. So yeah, congress.gov. Go to the website. It's nice. And I think that just about covers it for this week. So thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe to our channel, because we've got lots of really cool videos that come out all the time. Isaiah will be back. Fear not. I'm just temporary. And yeah, we will see you soon. Have a good week, guys, and keep up with Congress. Lots of cool stuff happening. And yeah, be sure to check out our site too, dailyclout.io, not .com, .io. Got lots of cool blogs and updates and stuff on there too. So, okay, now I'm officially signing off. See ya.